Story recapped here. Today, I'm going to explain an action, adventure, sci-fi film called Oblivion. Spoilers ahead. Watch out and take care. 50 years after an alien race invades Earth, humans have left and found a new home on Titan, Saturn's largest moon. The alien race, the Scavs, were defeated, but the planet has been decimated. The moon has been destroyed, cities have been reduced to ashes, and most of the land is uninhabitable. Humans built the Tet, a massive satellite orbiting the Earth serving as a temporary space station before the migration to Titan. Only 2 people remain on the planet, technician Jack and communication officer, Vika, stationed on Tower 49. They handle drone maintenance, protecting hydro rigs that produce power for the new colony by converting seawater into fusion energy. Automated drones watch over the hydro rigs, and Jack ensures the drones function correctly. Remnants of the alien Scavs are still fighting, destroying drones, and disrupting hydro rig operations. Jack and Vika are holding out on their last task as they would be heading to Titan in 2 weeks, or so they think. Jack and Vika's day starts, and Jack gets into his aircraft, assessing the drones. The Tet comes into range, and they start communicating with their mission director, Sally. Jack flies his aircraft, looking for drones and seeing if they're functional. Jack then finds a downed drone, and he suspects another Scav sabotage. Jack heads to the drone and fixes it, but a Scav watches from the shadows. The drone goes back online but is unable to detect the Scav. Jack worries that the Scav attacks are getting more frequent, seeing that the drone he repaired had its fuel cell stolen. Vika reassures him, saying they'll be gone soon anyway. Jack then gets on his motorcycle to look for a missing drone. Jack hears a homing beacon sound coming from a sinkhole and descends the hole to investigate. Vika contacts Sally and requests a backup drone to be sent to Jack's location, as the sinkhole could hide Scavs. Jack drops into the hole and finds himself in a cavern. He navigates through the hole, following the beacon sound. He's surprised to see the sound is coming from a device, not a drone, and realizes he's in a trap. His foot gets caught in a rope and gets pulled, but he breaks free and starts shooting at the Scavs. He runs back to his rope and manages to pull himself up, but the rope snaps, and he falls back in. Luckily, a drone has come to his rescue. The drone scans the cavern, detecting multiple Scavs, and starts blasting. It obliterates the Scavs but turns its guns on Jack. Jack identifies himself as Tech 49, but the drone still needs to scan him to verify. Jack is relieved once the drone identifies him and launches off. Before heading out, Jack spots a book and takes it back with him. He arrives back on their tower and continues repairing a faulty drone. He examines a book but puts it away upon hearing Vika approaching. At supper, Jack happily shows Vika a plant he found, but Vika throws it out the window. Vika then scolds Jack for bringing in a possible contaminant into their home. At supper, Vika apologizes for disposing of the plant. She says they're close to leaving, and they can't take any risks. Jack says that he finds it odd how the Scavs seemed like they were trying to catch him, not kill him. Vika then heads into the pool for a swim, and Jack tells her he wants her to go with him to the surface. He wants to show her a place. Vika then pulls Jack into the water playfully, and they share an intimate moment. They begin kissing in the water, but Jack sees another woman's face. They are awakened early the following day by a massive explosion on the horizon. Jack flies off to investigate, and they see that one of the hydro rigs has been destroyed. Jack surmises that the Scavs may have weaponized a stolen fuel cell and found a way to detonate it inside the hydro rig. Sally is disappointed that Jack and Vika have lost over 10 drones and a hydro rig to the Scavs. Jack detects a strange signal from a different location and heads there to investigate. Vika sees the same thing and reports that the signal is being directed into space. Jack arrives at what appears to be the Empire State Building, now buried almost entirely underground, with just its top part exposed. Jack investigates and sees binoculars on the building and gets a strange vision. Jack breaks into the building and sees that the Scavs have placed a repeater on the radio tower, using the building as an antenna. Vika analyzes the signal and says it contains coordinates for a location in the middle of nowhere. Worried that the Scavs could be contacting more aliens, Jack shuts the signal down. Jack then does a perimeter sweep of their area, careful to avoid radiation zones. He starts flying between canyons, losing radio contact with Vika and flies into a hidden valley with lush forests, green fields, and a small wooden cottage. It appears that Jack had built this place as his sanctum. He still feels wary about heading to Titan as he believes Earth is still his home. Jack places the book he found earlier among his collection and starts playing music. He spends several hours enjoying the tranquility and says he'd rather stay there. Jack takes a nap and sees himself back on the Empire State Building in a time before the Scavs attacked, with the woman he saw in the pool. He jumps back awake and sees an object entering the Earth from space. Jack flies to the object and communicates with Vika. Vika says the object is landing in the same area where the beacon coordinates were pointing to. She requests backup from Sally, but Sally advises her to stand down as Sally would be sending drones to investigate instead. Before Vika can clarify the communication, the tech goes offline. Jack arrives at the crash site and identifies the fallen craft as a human spacecraft but appearing to resemble something from before the war with the Scavs. Vika orders Jack to return, concerned that it could be another trap, but Jack opts to investigate the site instead. Vika watches from Jack's aircraft's cameras and sees Jack darting around the debris-filled site. Jack reports back to Vika that escape pods containing human survivors are scattered all over the area. Jack comes across one pod and sees that the woman he's been seeing in his dreams and visions is inside. Drones then arrive and start firing at the pods. Jack orders the drones to stop, but they continue firing at the survivors. One drone gets to the woman's pod, but Jack stands in its way, shooting at the drone. The drone then decides to back off. In the distance, scavs are watching Jack. Jack returns to their tower with the pod, and Vika is terrified. The pod opens, and Vika says they have to report everything to Sally. Jack agrees, saying they should start with the drones killing the survivors. They transfer the woman to a bed, and she wakes up. Vika tends to her, giving her water. The woman, Julia, starts asking questions, and Vika tries her best to explain what has happened. They tell Julia that her ship had crashed and she's the only one who survived. They also inform her that she's been in hibernation for at least 60 years. Julia is dumbfounded, unable to comprehend the information, and bolts out of bed, saying she needs to get back to her ship. The group later has dinner, and Julia refuses to tell them anything about herself until she gets her hands on her ship's flight recorder. Jack then tells her about the scav invasion and everything that has happened. To their surprise, Julia starts giggling, thinking this is all a joke. Vika is visibly insulted. Julia then realizes Jack isn't joking. Jack later talks with Vika, still thinking about the drone shooting the survivors. Vika ignores this and says she wants Julia gone by the morning. Jack then asks Vika if she remembers anything before the mission and before they got their memories wiped. Jack asks if she remembers Julia, but Vika reminds Jack that it was a scav beacon that brought Julia back. At dawn the following day, Jack speaks with Julia, and she requests they return to the crash. Wanting to learn more about Julia and the crew, Jack agrees. As they rummage through the wreckage, and Julia finds the flight recorder, but they get ambushed by scavs. Vika watches helplessly as scavs drag Jack away. She informs Sally, and Sally sends drones immediately. Jack finds himself bound to a chair, and a man reveals himself from the darkness. The man, Malcolm, tells Jack they have been watching him. Malcolm then asks Jack why he's curious about the world and asks what he's trying to find in old books. Jack says there's no use interrogating him as his memories have been wiped. Lights turn on, and Jack sees he's in an underground base surrounded by humans. Malcolm shows him an old stealth helmet they use to mask their voices. He says it helps them hide from the drones, which are programmed to eliminate humans. Another man, Sykes, approaches and says they're wasting their time with Jack. They take Jack and show him around their base. Jack is in total disbelief as everything he's known being turned on its head. A lone drone locates Jack's DNA signature, and Vika is elated. Malcolm reveals that the Hydro rig's destruction was their doing and was achieved with a single fuel cell. Their ultimate plan is to send 10 fuel cells to the Tet in a stolen drone along with weapons-grade plutonium to eliminate the alien threat once and for all. They only need Jack to rewire the drone they've stolen. Jack refuses, and they threaten Julia. Before the altercation escalates, panic erupts as a drone makes its way to their hideout. Sykes and several men head out to take care of the drone, but it starts firing at them. Sykes fires a skillful shot, hitting the drone at a specific spot, causing it to lose all function completely. Jack tells them they need to let him and Julia go as the drones will keep returning. Malcolm agrees, giving Jack back his motorcycle. Malcolm tells Jack that the answers he's looking for lie in the radiation zones. Jack and Julia then leave. Jack heads for the Empire State Building and sends a message to Vika via the radio tower. Vika intercepts the message and sends an aircraft to retrieve Jack. Having too many questions boggling his mind, Jack demands answers from Julia. Julia decides to tell Jack the truth. She reveals that she was on a test flight to Titan when her crew got orders to investigate an object that appeared in deep space. The crew went into hibernation, and Julia says that Jack and Vika must have been the first to wake up. Jack is confused, but Julia continues, saying the object they were sent to investigate was the Tet. Julia then tells Jack that she is his wife. Julia tells him that it was there, that very building, where he proposed to her. Julia shows Jack her engagement ring, and Jack remembers. He remembers being on the Empire State Building with people before the scavs ever arrived. The two hug but are cut short when the aircraft arrives. Vika sees Jack and Julia hugging through the aircraft cameras and realizes she has lost her partner. Jack and Julia arrive back at the tower, and Vika refuses them entry. Jack tries to explain what happened to them and about the humans in hiding. Vika doesn't believe him, thinking Julia has manipulated Jack. Vika then contacts Sally and tells her Jack could no longer fulfill their duties and they are no longer an ineffective team. Sally acknowledges this, and the drone that Jack had been repairing comes to life. Jack tells Vika that they need to leave, but Vika says she wants to go to Titan. Suddenly, the drone appears and vaporizes Vika. The drone approaches Jack, but Julia shoots the drone down using the aircraft guns. Jack then heads to Vika's office and finally talks to Sally. Sally apologizes, saying the drone had malfunctioned, and orders Jack to deliver Julia to the Tet. Jack realizes that Sally is acting unnaturally, smiling and treating Vika's death as a minor accident. Jack and Julia leave on the aircraft, but drones are sent after them. Jack tries maneuvering through a tight canyon pass to lose the drones, but the drones keep chase. Jack hides behind a wall of water and waits for the drones to pass them by. As the drones pass, he pulls up behind them and starts shooting. Jack eliminates the first 2 drones with relative ease, but the last drone starts smashing into them. Jack then flies through a small crevice, finally leaving the 3rd drone behind. Unfortunately, they have strayed into the radiation zone, and the aircraft loses all power. They drop from the sky, but Jack manages to pull an ejection lever and they touch down with a hard landing. Jack gets up to look at his downed aircraft but sees someone has already arrived, inspecting the crash. He rushes to the man, shouting, but when he approaches, he sees that the man is him. Jack tries to calm the other man down, telling him they need to shut down the down drone, but the man keeps his gun pointed at Jack. Julia appears, and the man sees her, awakening his memories. Jack capitalizes and attacks the other Jack. They struggle, and Jack tries to disarm the other man, but they accidentally fire a shot. Julia is late to realize that she has been hit. Jack finally overpowers the other man by placing him in a leg lock. After the other Jack loses consciousness, Jack rushes to the drone and removes its power cell. He then rushes to Julia and sees she's bleeding. He rests Julia on a rock and races to the other man's aircraft, which he seizes from Tower 52. He ties up Tech 52 Jack and flies back to the tower. He arrives at the tower and takes medical supplies. On his way out, he runs into another Vika. Vika greets him, unable to tell that he's a different Jack, and kisses him. Jack then invites her to accompany him to the surface, but she refuses. Jack then leaves, headed for Julia. He tends to Julia's wounds and manages to stop her bleeding. Julia then awakens, finding herself in Jack's cottage. Julia can't help but smile, seeing that even though Jack had lost his memories, a part of him remains in the form of all the things he's collected. She then talks to Jack and tells her that it was their dream to build a small cottage by a lake. Jack says he is not the original Jack and knows he is one out of countless other copies but believes that he has loved Julia for as long as he can remember. The two then kiss and spend a night together in bed. The following day, Jack is preparing to leave. He tells Julia he wishes they could stay at the cottage forever, but he knows he needs to return to the humans and help them defeat the Tet. Julia makes him promise to return to the cottage once the fight is over, and he agrees. They find themselves back at the human hideout, and Malcolm welcomes them. Back in Tower 49, Sally replays Vika's earlier transport when Jack went missing, and she sends drones to look for Jack in the human hideout. Jack starts reprogramming the drone and places the bomb inside. Malcolm begins narrating how the alien invasion truly happened. He remembers seeing the moon get destroyed. After some time, the Tet arrives. Hundreds of thousands of copies of Jack came and initiated the attack. The copies were void of emotions, programmed to kill. The surviving humans succumbed to natural disasters. After the first wave of the invasion, the Tet initiated Phase 2, resource farming. For half a century, the hydro rig sucked the planet dry. It was not until recently when Malcolm spotted Jack collecting books when he realized that humanity still had a chance. When he saw Jack rescue Julia, he knew that Jack's memories would resurface. Jack finishes rewiring the drone, and the drone starts freaking out but calms down once it identifies Jack. They prepare to launch the drone, but the drones that Sally sent arrive and start shooting at the humans. The drones enter the base, and chaos erupts. The soldiers fight back, but the drones are too fast and powerful. Malcolm gets in a turret and starts hammering a drone with bullets. One drone corners Julia and a group of survivors, but Sykes shoots the drone down. Jack manages to eliminate the final drone by shooting its weak spot. The drone then explodes. When the rubble clears, they find that Malcolm had been wounded. He tells them to send the drone, but Jack tells him the drone had been decommissioned during the fight. Julia remembers that Sally had ordered Jack to bring her to the Tet. Julia offers to be brought up, hiding the bomb in her hibernation pod. Jack considers this and agrees. They prepare themselves for the sacrifice, and Julia gets into her hibernation pod along with the bomb. Jack gives her one final kiss before she lays down. Jack loads the pod into his aircraft and flies to the Tet. He plays Julia's ship's voice recorder and finally hears what transpired before the Tet took him. It's revealed that he and Vika were the first ones to awake from hibernation, and they were the ones who saw the Tet. They weren't a couple but were close friends. The Tet hijacked their ship's controls, and they decided to eject the others who were still in hibernation. Jack and Vika end up being the only two people getting sucked into the Tet. The team they ejected were the same people in the pods that the drones had all fired upon. It's also revealed that Sally was a real person in NASA, but the Tet must have mimicked her somehow. Jack now reaches the Tet with a hibernation pod, and Sally lets him in. The Tet interior appears empty, only populated by a few drones. Sally's voice now appears distorted, sounding more mechanical. He sees the Tet lined with incubating humans, all copies of him and Julia. Jack then comes face to face with the Tet's core and brings out the hibernation pod. He opens the pod and reveals that it's Malcolm he had brought along with him. He then begins wiring up the bomb. Back on Earth, Julia awakens and finds herself in Jack's cottage. Sykes and the others see drones approaching and prepare for an attack. Jack and Malcolm detonate the bomb at the Tet, and the Tet erupts into a massive fireball. All the drones drop dead, and everyone on Earth sees a bright flash in the sky. Several years pass, and Julia is living happily in the cottage with a daughter. Sykes and the other arrive, but a person of note is with them. The Tech 52 Jack has survived and has spent his time searching for Julia and the cottage that Tech 49 Jack had built. Tech 52 Jack finally finds Julia, her daughter, and humanity's new home.